Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Aaron Kornblatt. I am your host for today. I'm also the head of community and education at Gumloop, and I've got what I think is the most exciting session we've ever done here, building a AI Slackbot, one of my favorite use cases on Gumloop. Uh, Hello to everybody. If this is your first time joining us, please say hi in the YouTube chat. Please, and I would love to know where you're joining from. So let me know. We've also got a quick poll up whether you want to do this today in dark mode or light mode. And, we've got a pretty close. We got about 60% dark mode. But I will do my quick introduction, and then we'll close it off for today. We've got Chris from Maine, got Joseph from San Diego. We've got Wes from Denver, Coleman from Vegas. Yeah, got a good crowd today. Super excited. It's one of my favorite use cases. So what we're going to build today is the ability to run flows from Slack. What usually people do with this is like, hey, I have this document and I want to let anyone just kind of QA that document. We're going to use a sales policy to can I give a 60% discount to any customer? And then we're going to build more and more complexity, right? Assessing whether the person wants a response or not. We're actually going to build 4 different versions of our little chatbot today. Got a few more folks. Welcome Bodan from Ukraine, Agent Everything from Brooklyn, BM from Toronto, Ryan from Hamilton. Got Grace from the Philippines. Wow, I feel a lot of pressure. Folks are staying up late to join this session. Super, super excited. Really appreciate all of you joining. Dark mode has a lead, but let's jump into, as I always say, let's jump into what we're going to cover today. So I always like to break down our flow before we start building in Gumloop. So very simply, where we're going to start, we're going to have a Slack message, and we're going to have AI respond to that message, right? So as if we're just going to ChatGPT or Claude for each message and then responding. That's going to be the first version of our flow. Then we're going to say, well, actually, what we want is to provide context. We want specific questions around a sales policy. Right. So what we want that Slackbot to do is to be kind of that Q&A with a document to say, hey, can I give a 40% discount? We're going to go and give context into this document every time we run the flow. Then naturally, you're going to say, well, what if the message is not about sales policy? Can we add a little bit of agentic kind of thought process there to say like, hey, do we need to respond here? So that's going to be version 3. We're going to answer the question, is this about sales policy? If the answer is no, do nothing. Don't respond. If the answer is yes, go ahead and QA with the document. Answer that person's question. And then for my little more advanced, why do we need to kind of provide context? We're actually going to give a Salesforce opportunity ID, right? And have AI read what's going on in that account, read the sales policy, and respond, right? To say, yes, we can provide that type of summary of that discount to that user. So that's where we're going to kind of progress. We're going to go step by step. We're going to start very, very easy, right? And then progress and add functionality. And that's often how you build amazing workflows, right? You start small, you build piece by piece. And then at the end, you're going to be like, wow, we built all of that in 40 minutes. Hopefully that's what we're saying by the end of this webinar. Love the engagement in the chat. Dark mode still has a little bit of a lead. So today is going to be another dark mode day. And really appreciate everyone. We got Gabrielle from Los Angeles, Pablo from Costa Rica, Portside from San Diego, Isaac from Atlanta. Really appreciate. I'm always have my eye on the chat. So if you have any questions throughout, please don't hesitate. I love the engagement so far. Let's start building, right? Let's start right here. Very simple. And the reason I love building these little workflows is that they're going to look exactly the same in Gumloop. So if you're new to Gumloop, this is a flow. These are the steps we want the automation to take, and those steps are called nodes. So what do I want to do? I have this little chatbot, right? And this is where I want to read messages. For first, we're just going to say, what is the largest country in the world? And we want AI to read that message and respond to it. So what is the first step in my flow? Well, I need to read, right? I want to go to Slack. We're going to search up Slack. We're going to use the message reader. Already a question, can this use other messaging platform like Teams? Absolutely. We're going to use Slack as an example, but you can use email. Really think of this as a workflow step by step, right? So what do I want to do? I want to go to that channel So that channel is called Chatbot Webinar QA. And I want to read the thread ID, the sender names, and the message. Right now, I want this to run every time we get a new message. So I'm going to activate it as a trigger. Triggers are saying every time a new message, a new thing happens in that application, run this flow. I'm going to ignore bot messages and ignore replies so we don't get into a death loop, right? So I'm going to save that and let's just run it and see what message it grabs. This is going to be kind of our testing. So I have a message, what is the largest country in the world? That is what I want to pass to AI. Our first step, remember, is just saying, answer every single question that comes into that Slack. So in Gumloop, you can use AI in different ways. I want to use AI category, got Ask AI, extract data, categorize. We're actually going to use a lot of these today. Very simply, we're going to add Ask AI. This is that conversation with a chatbot. We're going to provide it a question. We're going to pass in that message. Now, if you're new to Gumloop, how do you pass information across nodes? I'm saying take the message here, pass it to AI, like that. But now I actually want to give some context. So I'm going to say respond to this user's question. And then we're going to pass in the message. Now you can pick whatever model you want. All of these are included within your Gumloop subscription, right? This is a very simple question. We're going to keep the default GPT-4.1 mini. And what do we want to do from there? We want to respond to the user. So we're going to send a Slack message. I'm going to go back to Slack, message sender. What do I want to respond? What message do I want to send? I want to send the AI's response. I want to send it to our chatbot channel. Now, pro tip, I want to respond in thread, right? That makes it a little less chaotic in the channel. I can go reply in thread. And then I can select the thread ID. That's great. I have it right here. I can pass it in. Let's go ahead and thread ID. And for folks who want to build alongside with me, you can. I've also already included all of the templates we're going to build today in the description of this video. So you can open those up and peruse them as you like, or build alongside. It might be easy for the beginning, and we're going to speed up a little bit in a moment. Cool. So what am I doing here? Every message that comes in, I'm reading it. I'm responding to that message. And I'm replying in the thread. Now, we recently, let's actually run this for that message we just had, right? So it's answering the question and it responded. If I go here, boom, the largest country in the world by land area is Russia. It spans across Eastern Europe. That's awesome. Now, to actually make this live, right? To make the trigger live, this is something we released recently. If you haven't been in Gumloop a couple weeks, you can now publish your flow. This is great if you're testing. You're like, hey, this is what I want. I'm happy with this flow. It works the way I want. You can now publish. So now with trigger, first publish. And what that allows you to do is once you've published, you now have a live version and you can keep editing without affecting what's live. So you can always go back to previous versions, right? So that one in here, and we're going to have multiple versions, one or more for each kind of incremental improvement we do on this. So now this is live. If I go here, if anyone wants to drop a question in the chat, I'm happy to run it. What is the most populous, what is the city with the largest population in the US? What is this going to do? It's going to read the message. We're going to go ahead and run the flow, right? So if we go here, we see that it's running. That means that it is kind of sending to the bot, and we already have a reply, New York City. Fantastic. Not the most useful thing, right? But it gives you the principle. Now, what we want to do here is actually ask questions about this sales policy. So I'm sure you have documents that look just like this, which are kind of the policies within your company. It could be, in this case, what kind of discount, what are the sales rules? It might be vacation. It might be really important documentation like, oh, where can I join or update a Gumloop live stream? All of that is written down. Now, it is a little bit of work to go into those documents and search and things like that. Agent, I will fix that to give you the template. How do we go ahead and add context, right? So what we want to do is say, okay, provide the context of these guidelines to the AI and use that to answer the person's question, right? So we need an extra step, and we need to adjust the prompt to say, hey, you're going to get a message, take that context and answer this user's question using that context. Extremely easy in Gumloop. Let's go ahead and add the context in. I'm going to use a Google Doc, a Docs reader. This is saying, I want you to go to this Google Doc. I want you to read all of this, right? And it's going to output the doc content and the doc title. You can have multiple documents, right? And I want to provide it as context to Ask AI. Very easy. I'm going to drag it in, and I'm going to say sales policy like so. And I can add in very easily the doc content. Let's name this node sales policy. Great. So now we're saying respond to this user's question. I'm going to adjust the prompt just a tiny bit. So use the provided sales policy below to answer the user's question. So I'm going to say user question. Now, I like to delineate just as we add more context. So especially if we're adding larger and larger documents. And then I'm going to say sales policy, just so it understands that that is the start and end of the sales policy. Now note, especially if you have larger documents, you might want a much larger context window. So you can use something like Gemini 2.5 Flash or Pro that have that 1 million token context. If that doesn't tell you anything, totally okay. Pick whatever model works for you. So there we go. And now we're going to answer the question. I'm going to save this. Now remember, we have a trigger on. Unless we publish changes, the trigger is not going to change. Our flow is always going to run against the current published version. And that's what allows us to play around in the flow, even when it is running. So now in order to make these changes live, I'm going to publish, and I'm going to say now with context. Confirm. Great. Now we've deployed a new version. We've published a new version. Now, let's go ahead and ask a policy. Can I give a 60% discount for a 12-month term? So what's going to go on here? It's going to read the message. It's going to go ahead and analyze the message with the provided context. Let's go here. Let's go see. It is currently running. Is reading the document. I'm going to answer a question. How do I invite Gumloop app to the channel? You just go at Gumloop. So you invite the bot to your workspace, and then anytime you have, invite Gumloop. There we go. And now we have an answer. Let me move out of the way just so we can read it. Always in the way. Maximum discount allowable without CRO approval is 20%. Discounts greater than 20% require explicit written approval from the CRO, right? And if we go into our document and we search discount, right, we have our discounting threshold. No discounts beyond 20%. So now we can have that Q&A with the bot. Okay, and then I can say, what else do we want to ask it? Maybe we want to ask it, can I give a 36-month term with access to betas? So in maybe 10 minutes, we've been able to just start building out our chatbot. So there's a question, great question. What was the latency between ask and response? Let's see. There's a few dependencies here, right? So the assessment is instant, right? What takes time is the assessment of the AI. We can see how quick it was. There we go. The maximum allowable contract term is 24 months, right? Access to betas can only be given as part of a pilot or code development relationship. And these are all kind of coming from that document. So now what's great is that folks can update this document in real time, and then it'll always be constant with that channel, right? So there's a few questions. Sam is like, how can we make this private, right? What you can do is respond as a DM, for instance, right? You'll always have logs around all the questions folks are answering. What I see a lot of, what's really interesting, is how do you improve your documentation where you can see what are people asking, right? What wasn't answered or was unable to answer, right? Dusan, I'll answer your question as we build more workflows. Great. Okay, so already already where we are. We've built this. We've built this. And now we're going to go ahead and say, okay, is this actually about sales policy? Right? A weird thing is if I say good morning, right? Something, there are people chatting in the channel. This is going to trigger the flow. And currently we have nothing in place, right? It says, good morning. How can I assist you today? If you have any questions regarding the sales policy or need clarification, feel free to ask. What we want to say is maybe we want to have kind of an AI assess, right? Whether or not this question, the message is about sales policy, right? And that's going to be kind of our first step into what a lot of people call this agents, right? This there's going to be an AI assessing what to do and then doing the right thing. Now, where we found a lot of success when it comes to these types of agents is deterministic. What I mean by that is we're first going to have the AI assess something, and then it's going to do precise things that we want it to do. We're not going to let it loose on all of our Google Docs or all of our Notion, which I'm seeing in the chat. We're just going to say, hey, make a decision, and then based on your assessment, do these things. And that's where we've seen a lot of success because it gives the people providing the context, building out this documentation control, right? But it also allows the end user, right? People working every day, trying to close deals, make work happen, to get access to that in the world in which they live, right? So there's a question in the chat, like, can we connect to Notion? Absolutely, right? So instead of a Google Doc here, it might be a Notion doc. And we have a Notion reader as well. And we're gonna use this Salesforce example in a moment. So what we need to do is right here, right? Between the Slack message and this context kind of flow right here, we wanna have an AI say, is this question about sales policy? Now, to do that, we need to have kind of a route. We call this the AI router node. So I'm gonna disconnect here like that. And we're gonna add a little step right here that says, okay, if it's about sales policy, run this thing. If it's not about sales policy, do nothing. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a router node. So a router node creates routes. But what does that mean in practice? Right, let's move this down a little bit. Pro tip, you can shift select multiple nodes. Okay, so how does a router node do? We want to connect what we want to assess, right? We want to assess this message and create different routes. So route one is going to be sales policy question. Okay, this is saying, okay, the first route, this is where we do have a question about sales policy. We want to assess the message and say, is this question about sales policy? So questions about sales policies. So this could be discounting, term limits, etc. So we're just writing what we want to go down this route. You might be, is this a question about vacation policy? And once you get more and more complex, and we're gonna build a third route in a moment, you can also start saying, does it include certain information? And what's great about this is when you're using AI, you just need to write out what your conditions are. Now, pro tip, you always wanna go from most specific to least specific. And the reason is that it's gonna assess one by one. It's gonna say, hey, is this about sales policy? Yes or no? If no, go to the next one, right? So if you have a very specific, like, is this message from the CEO about sales policy? You want that to be your first route. It's always going to pick one, and that's why I always recommend having like a other. So other, right? Let me know in the chat if that makes sense. So we're gonna go to messages and I say, message is not about sales policy. And you'll notice for every route, we have outputs. So everything we're passing in then becomes an option in each of the routes. So we had three things we're passing in: the message, the sender name, and the thread ID. All of those become options for each route. So now we can say, okay, if it is a question about sales policy, what do we want to do? We want to go to AI. And then we can say, answer this user's question, like that. And then respond to it. I need to pass in the thread ID, always from the route, like that. I want the thread ID, like so. And it's going to go ahead and answer. So now it's saying, okay, if the question is about sales policy, execute all these things. What do we want to do in the other one? I always recommend having an output. and that'll allow you to debug. It's a little easier. So I'm just going to say, what message did we put into other? Bam. Okay. There we go. Let's save this. Now, Doosan asked a great question. Can you explain versioning? Again, absolutely. So far, we've made a lot of changes. Like, this flow is extremely different from the flow that we published a moment ago. But now, if I go to Chatbot and I say, hello, my lovelies, great weather today. This is going to run against the last published flow. So it's going to respond, right? Until you publish your changes, your live flow is going to be running. This allows you to make changes in full confidence without affecting live flows. How do I know it's live? I go here. I can see now with context. This is a draft. We haven't published our changes. So in order to get the routing in, we need to publish the change. So let's go here. Let's publish now with routing. And I can even add a description. Any messages that are not about sales policy will not be answered. Let's confirm that. There we go. Now, if we go here and say, what is the maximum allowable term? That should get us an answer, right? So let's go here. Let's see our flow running. There we go. We can click into it and see, I already have an answer. The maximum allowable term is 24 months. And then if I say, how's the weather today? In that case, we're going to go down the other route. We are not going to answer this message. Hopefully, if all goes well. You never know with AI. It's going to work. I'm pretty sure. We can go in, and then if we want to see which route, let me move out of the way. You can't see the done. Apologies for that. There we go. There we go. Let's go here. Let's go to that message, the last message I sent, and figure out how did it assess which route to go down. I can go here. I can go to the router node, and it selected other, which makes sense based on the message, how's the weather today? So now we have this little agent, I use that word between quotes, this agentic decision maker. For folks who are a little more technical, this would be called an orchestrator, deciding which deterministic flow we want to run, right? So this gives you control as the person building out the flow. You can imagine like update this opportunity or give me a summary of my Asana tasks. You can run all of that, but you need to be deterministic. You need to build out those flows. There we go. Let's go back to our main flow. Let me give it a name here. I like giving it. So this is going to be Chatbot Live. And I'll share this with you as well. Okay, where are we? Like we're 20 minutes in roughly, and we've built our first 3 chatbots. So it's reading a message. We did that. We gave it context. We're now assessing, giving a little decision maker to when we need to answer and when we don't need to answer. Now, where really we can level up is kind of do more complex things. So I have this example in Salesforce where I just noted, right, this contract with this customer that has a lot of like context. They want to spend 2.2 million. They want a 12% discount. They want a waiver of implementation and onboarding fees and priority access. Assessing whether we can do this is a lot of work, right? I need to go into here. I need to read and assess and figure out, okay, who do I need? Do I need to talk to the CRO? Who do I need to do? What do I need to do? But it'd be really easy for me if I can just say, hey, read opportunityId XYZ and go ahead and assess whether we can do it, right? So if I was to chart this out, I had a little bit of trouble charting this out. Let me know if this makes sense. So we're going to read the Slack message and say, is this a question about sales policy? And is there an opportunity ID? If that's the case, we're going to get the opportunity ID. We're going to go to Salesforce. We're going to grab that context of Salesforce. Then we're going to provide the context of our sales policy, and we're going to respond. If we don't have an opportunity ID, run the flow we just built. Maybe it's just a general question around policy. We want to allow both. So we need our little agent, right? Our little router node. It's a big router node. I don't know why I'm calling it litter. It does a lot of work, right? to assess both things. So we're going to create a new route, right? So if I go here, I'm coming back. There's some questions around versioning. I'm going to do one more example around versioning. What I always like to do is to disconnect. So we're going to reconnect those in a moment. What is the most specific route? The most specific route is we're going to call sales policy with ID. That's what I want to be my first route. The message is going to be questions about sales policy, including, and the user is including in opportunity ID. And I always like to give it an example, right? So I'm just going to connect. I'm going to copy this example like so from Salesforce. So then that is kind of our most specific route. Let's disconnect this. What is our second is like, we're going to call this policy, sales policy Q, no ID. So message is about sales policy, does not include an opportunity ID. And I can say general question about sales policy. What's great is you can iterate on both the routes and the prompts and really assess and make sure that this flow does what you want it to do. But you always have full control. You're not just saying, hey, read all my docs, figure it out on your own, where we've seen poor success. And then we're going to have other, right? Here, we're going to say message not about sales policy. So now we have three routes. Other goes here, just like before. Sales policy with no ID. We're going to run the flow we built a moment ago, right? Where we got the user question and then sales policy, and we're going to respond. Now, for folks who are a little more familiar with Gumloop, you can build subflows for each one of these routes, right? That is a recommendation. If there's some questions around that, happy to answer. We are going to answer in the thread, right? So just like before, what are we doing here? We're saying, okay, if it is a message with no opportunity ID, respond just like we built a moment ago. Now, our first route, what do we want it to do? First, we need to figure out what the opportunity ID is. So I'm going to send a message, something like this. Can I give the discount this opportunity wants? And write that. There we go. And then we want to figure out, okay, what is the opportunity ID? Then we want to go to Salesforce, grab all the context around that opportunity, and then run AI with the context to answer that question. So you could imagine that. So what do we first need to do? We need to look at the message, extract the opportunity ID, right? So how do we do that? We're going to use the extract data. Extract data is using AI to extract information. Let me just move some nodes around. Let me move this like so. Let's build out over here. We're saying, okay, this is connecting. We know that there's an opportunity ID because we're going down this route. We're going to take with ID the message. There we go. And then we're saying, okay, extract opportunity ID. So how does this work? Extract data takes text, takes a message, a contract, an invoice, and then you specify what you want to extract from that message. In our case, it's pretty clear. It's opportunity ID. And I say, extract the Salesforce opportunity ID from the message, format like that. So it understands what we're running. You can use a more advanced model. I don't think we'll need, it's pretty easy, right? Before we would have to do regex or whatever you call it. We don't need to do that anymore. Now we're going to have the opportunity ID. What is our next step? We want to go to Salesforce. And before this, I created an MCP node called Salesforce Opportunity Details Retriever, right? If you're unfamiliar, we might do a, oops, let me move myself out of the way. Apologies here. So how I built that, I'm happy to do it at the end if we have some time, is I just had a Salesforce MCP node and I said, given, let me zoom in here, given an opportunity ID, return all details and notes. That's it. I ran it and it gave me exactly what I need right here. So what does this do? It takes as input an opportunity ID, which we know we have because we're going down this route. And it returns all details and all opportunity notes. So we're hoping that it retrieves this right here. Okay, almost there, right? If I go back, what do we now need to do? We need to pass the context and the opportunity into AI. So I'm going to add an Ask AI node. I'm going to say, okay, let's actually say, okay, answer this user's question about sales policy given the account information and sales policy below. So let's pass this in. We're saying, okay, question, where does the question come from? It comes from Slack. That's from the router right here. So we're going to say, okay, that message, that's the question. End of question. Opportunity details. That comes from the step above. So I'm going to add here. Opportunity details. You can see how having a larger context window might help here, especially if you have accounts that might be a little large or a lot of documentation. Opportunity notes. This is where we currently have our information, right? This is a Salesforce note with what the user, in this case, Microsoft came back with. And finally, we want sales policy. So you can imagine, like, we're doing a lot of work, right? For the user. We're reading Salesforce. We can imagine reading other internal documentation or information. And where does the sales policy live? It lives right here. Let's pass it in. Sales policy. And there we go. And we can say, yeah, that's good. That sounds good. And now we want to respond, right? Final step, we want to respond in Slack. We could totally make this a little cleaner and reuse the existing nodes with a join path, but I want to keep it relatively simple here. We're going to respond just like before. This is called Chatbot. We are going to reply in thread. So we need to pass in the thread ID. That also comes from right here. So we're always passing from the node. There we go. There we go. Let's remove this. Okay. Let's run this. Let's go ahead and run. And let's kind of see what message. Okay, so it's running on how was the weather today. Let's publish now with routing. Okay, let's run a new message. Okay, and let's see what's going on. It is running. It's running Ask AI. Okay, so we got the response. Oh, I did not send it to Slack. Okay, so we don't have, okay, okay, let's fix that. Now's a good time. I'm gonna be done in about 2-3 minutes. So let me know if you have any questions about this flow. I'm gonna finish this up right here. Okay, great. So we are just going to answer in Slack. Like so. Okay, I will send the recording right after. We want to send the response. Chatbot. Like so. And let's go ahead and pass in like so. Okay, let's respond like that. And we should be good to go. Let's respond in the channel. That's fine. Let's save this. Remember, we have to publish every time we make a change because we've made a version. Okay. Okay, and now let's go ahead and republish this. So now with actual routing, with responses, Okay. And now let's finally, I'll have it respond. I like it to respond in the channel just to give you an example of both use cases, right? So here it's always going to respond when it is an opportunity ID, like so. And let me know, and we'll finish after this. We'll have about 10, 15 minutes of Q&A. There's one question I was expecting that no one has asked yet. So let's save that. Let's run this flow. Okay, what's going on here? Let's go back here. It's running. Let's go watch it run, which is always really, really fun. And let's go step by step of what's going on here. So it's reading the message. Let's go into a sales policy. What route did it pick? Sales policy with ID, fantastic. What did it grab from Salesforce? It got this big blob, right? Let me move myself out of the way. Right, it got this big blob. And now me, I don't love this blob, but AI loves it. AI has no problem reading this type of information, right? There we go. And then we have our output, posted thread ID. We have the response. And then we have a response. Hi, Aaron, regarding the opportunity is for 2.2 million. That is correct. 90% probability, appears to be a high value enterprise deal. Discounting guidelines, up to 15% discount, waiver on fees, conclusion and recommendation. You can offer 12% discount. You cannot waive implementation onboarding fees. You cannot grant priority or exclusive access to new features. So what's amazing about this is that it read that that is what the request was. So that's number one. It read and said, okay, Microsoft wants waiver of implementation onboarding fees. If we go here and we go into implementation fees, they say discount exclusions. We cannot discount implementation fees. And then features. These creates operational bottlenecks and sets bad precedents. So we never allow this. So we see that the AI has correctly assessed the opportunity, second, correctly assessed the document, and came back with the right information. And now it's great. And I can say, okay, who should I talk to for a 20% discount on a 24-month term? Now, in this case, it should go down no policy ID, right? So here, if we go back, so there's a great question. Oh, there's some great questions. I really want to get to them. So please, I'm going to finish this. We'll wrap up, and then some great questions around how can we improve this flow, or what else can we do? Right, so if I go back here, we see who should I talk to for 20% discount. A 20% discount is the maximum discount threshold that can be offered without CRO approval. And it gives me my context, right? So now if we go to that flow, we see that it's picked the route without the policy ID. So we're actually assessing and correctly picking the right route using the router node. So if I go here to router, it said sales policy queue, no ID, right? So it's amazing. You can start adding more and more and more context and more flows to add to the power of this one Slackbot that we've built really, really quickly. Okay, so what do you need to remember? Let's go back here. So what I recommend is start very small. One message, one response, maybe one document as context. Then add router, add context, right? Let me go to my little flow here. Start here. And I'm going to share flows in the description of each one of these steps. Very simple. Then add context so folks can start asking questions, improve the prompt, change the model, see how it's going, assess what kind of questions people are answering. Then add a router to start deciding what to do. And then based on what folks are providing, you can add additional routes. You can even say, hey, I need this context in order to answer this question. That could be one of your routes, right? So really from here, it's up to you and how your business works to build out the Slackbots the way you need them. So hopefully this was useful. I personally love this use case, and I can't wait to see what you all build. If you want to learn more about Gumloop and how to build in Gumloop, highly recommend Gumloop University. I'm going to drop a link in the chat. And I'm a personal big fan of learning cohorts. So we have one starting on Monday, and we have a whole day on Wednesday around this specific example. We're using subflows and a little more advanced functionality. So highly recommend joining a cohort. We're having one kicking off Monday. It is a week-long intensive crash course into Gumloop and AI workflows. Okay, that's what I wanted to cover today. Let's jump into my favorite part, Q&A. So if you've dropped a question and I'm not looking at it and I answer, just feel free to drop it again into the chat. We're going to spend the next 10 minutes making sure that you're answering questions. And I'm realizing I didn't do it in dark mode. I'm so sorry. I made you answer. I got carried away. Okay, so let's make the rest in dark mode. I really apologize. Works. No, let's go back here. Let me go into dark mode. I'm really, really sorry about that. Where is our dark mode? Here we go. Okay. Apologies. Next one is fully in dark mode, I promise. Okay, question. So what is your preferred way to run this process from a website chat interface? So if you're not using Slack or an existing trigger like email or a form, you would have to use webhooks, right? So every single flow in Gumloop can be triggered via webhook. You click right here, and it'll give you a way to trigger basically using the person's message. We don't have a built-in chat interface, right? So you would have to do that. Okay, yes, I'll share a recording. If you have any questions, let me know in the chat. So J75P asks a great question. I can't bring it up on screen, but the question is, let's say you don't know what the opportunity ID is, right? So let's say the salesperson doesn't know what the opportunity ID is. How can we run this flow? That is a great question. So I used an opportunity ID because it was unique, it was simple, but you can very easily build a Salesforce node. Let me add another subflow just so we're building here. A Salesforce node. So given in account name, find the account name and associated notes. You can very simply do that. And if no account name is found, return no account name, right? So depending on your Salesforce instance, you can build, I'm just gonna kick it off just so you see what an example is. What it's gonna go ahead and do is assess your prompt and then understand what configuration. It's building out a node for you. So these are our MCP nodes. There's some content around that in University. So account name, account notes, right? We can give it a try. Our Salesforce instance is mainly for testing. So what's going to happen here is going to go ahead and generate the code. And once you've built out a node that does what you want it to do, you can use it in all of your flows. So yeah, I used the opportunity ID because it was distinct in the message. And I thought that was a cool example of the router node. But you can build this whole flow exactly how you want it to be, and even answer the person with like, hey, here's an example of what I found. Does this make sense? Right? So yeah, let me know if we should do like a Salesforce MCP node building live stream or webinar, and I would love to do that. Yeah, does that make sense? I'm gonna exit it here. There we go. Cool. What other questions do we have? Okay, there's a question from Mike. Could you add a second trigger to this by email and Slack? So just so I'm clear on your question is that you want to say, okay, I get a Slack message and I want to send the response, right, via email and Slack. Absolutely. So you can very easily add a Gmail sender node, like so right here, and connect it to the right node. You might want to grab the user's email from their Slack user ID. Maybe you have a sheet of that. Maybe I'm not pretty sure you can do that directly from the Slack MCP node, but you can totally respond, or you can also build an interface, right? So that's all stuff we'll cover in cohorts or University. Happy to dive into that. Cool. Do we have any other questions? Super clear. Don't see any other questions. That's what I wanted to show you today. Really appreciate all of you joining. Stay up to date, gumloop.com/university/webinars. We have a ton more coming. Really appreciate all of you coming. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them into the comments. And that's it for me today. Appreciate all of your time. I can't wait to see what you all automate, and I can't wait to see all of your Slackbots. Have a great day, everyone. Have a great week. Bye, everyone.